Hello viewers and welcome. I recently saw the question asked, how do you make the transition from a controller to a wheel and pedals? And I thought, there's probably an absolutely enormous number of people around the world sim racing who don't even have a driver's license. There's a huge number of people who are under the age of 16 who are a lot better at this than I am. And so I figured, you know what? For those people who've never driven a car, I'm going to put this little video together to give you an idea of how to make this switch and how to make it successful. So you can give it a good test and see whether it's something you really want to do or not. Now, I started on a controller 25 years ago. That one. Not this exact one. I've probably gone through 2 or 3 over the course of the time of playing video games, but this is what I used when I first started sim racing. And I wasn't even able to use the analogs. So, turning was digital, and you had gas, brake. This was your steering, which meant when you pressed left, for example, your wheels went like this immediately. There was none of this. You had straight and you had turned, and you had straight and you had turned, and so you got really good at knowing how many times did you have to mash that button and how long could you hold it to get. Man, it wore out tires like you can't even imagine. But you got used to it. I got good at it. I did the 42 hours of Nürburgring with that controller. No, I'm not dyslexic. After the first 18 hours, the power went out and I had to start over again. I remember the day vividly. And then in 2002, Logitech released the Driving Force steering wheel and pedal set for the PlayStation 2. And it was absolutely a game changer. Pun fully intended. I now had analog control over the steering. Just as an example, I could do this. And the wheels would do this. And it made an enormous difference. But even for me, I'd been driving at that point for almost a decade. Even for me, I had to turn off everything. Let the game take care of it. It was on automatic transmission, for goodness sakes, because these buttons, my brain couldn't take buttons at the time. Now, I need more buttons. I don't have enough, okay? It's a thing. So this video is some tips and tricks on making that transition. The first question you need to ask is, do you need to? Now, will it make you a better driver or a faster driver? Not necessarily. Guys in the league that I'm in used controllers. One guy used a keyboard and mouse, and the 3 of them routinely kicked my ass. This will not necessarily make you a better driver, but it does make it more realistic. Question 2. Do you need really good gear? No, not even remotely. The Driving Force I had from 2002 made the game that much more enjoyable because I was driving, not button mashing. It's good to have something with some force feedback because it makes the game a little bit more realistic, and it can help in the driving because you're getting a certain amount of feel with the wheels on the road, and then you suddenly lose traction and that force feedback goes away. You notice it, and it can actually help you to counter that. So having good force feedback is a good option. I highly recommend it, but you don't need to go with something like a direct drive from Fanatec to get good force feedback. The Logitech systems have good force feedback. The Thrustmaster systems have really good force feedback, and none of those are all that super expensive. Start with something ideally used, good, if you can. I picked up a Thrustmaster T300 used for, I think, $300, and I used that for a couple of years before I upgraded to the Fanatec. Fantastic. Wonderful. And the idea being that if you suddenly decide you don't like that lump sitting in the middle of your living room, it's not going to be something you've sunk a huge amount of money into. So when you first start using the wheel, I highly recommend you turn on a bunch of assists. Traction control, ABS, automatic transmission. The reason being, get used to coordinating your hands and feet in the actions of accelerating, braking, and turning. That's a thing. If you're not used to doing that, it takes a bit to coordinate both hands and both feet. It's like, you can, pat your head and rub your belly. So you're doing this, and then you start patting your head, and you can actually make it work, right? But most people, when you ask them what they did, they go, well, I started rubbing my belly, and then I kind of had to turn off my brain and just let this thing go, and then start patting my head. Well, that's not going to work in a race if your left foot can't be accessed while your right foot's being used. You need to have full coordination over everything. When you got that, turn on manual transmission, because that will make an enormous difference when you can use the engine to slow you down, and you can hold that accelerator a little longer and eke out a little bit more speed before you make the shift into the next gear. it actually helps in your acceleration. So that's the next step. When you've mastered all that, start turning off assists. Traction control, ABS, although in some games, traction control and ABS are a thing. If you feel like you need to use them, use them. I use traction control in Gran Turismo 7 because the game's new update, the physics, has changed things, and traction control is now a thing. Don't worry about it. Use what you need to enjoy the game. Simple as that. And then, of course, the final step is potentially upgrading. If you decide, I love driving with a wheel and pedals, it's super, I love it, it's fantastic, I want more realism, I want a better set, I want better feel, I want all blah, 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 then look at the upgrades. Look into a top-end Thrustmaster or a Fanatec set or a Moza. There's all kinds of names, there's all kinds of videos telling you all about them, so I'm not going to go into them because, frankly, I don't know much about the other ones. I've been using this for quite some time and I love it, so I'm happy. So there you go. If there's any questions that you have, please put them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. In the meantime, I hope this was helpful. If it was, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe, and have an awesome day. And I'll catch you all next time. Peace.